what I call is an oil spill, and actually an oil dump occurred in the Follette sewer system. On Friday, October the 7th, we shut our office down. We became aware that there was a combination of oil, there was a combination of methane gas, there was in the crude oil itself, there are properties called ethyl benzene, benzene properties, toluene, all of which are carcinogens. Now, the important thing about this is that it was irresponsible for a city official to go on Channel 13 in Knoxville and to tell this community that it was non-hazardous, to tell this community that it was just a small odor and would be dissipated, which in fact was a lie, okay? One of two things: either they made a statement in reckless disregard for the truth, or number two, they didn't know what they were talking about and should have kept their mouths shut if they didn't know what they were talking about. I began, when we learned early on Friday morning, I was in Athens, Tennessee. I had to try a lawsuit in McMinn County. I had suffered through this on Thursday, October the 6th, all day. I was the last to leave my office because of preparations for this case. We had been through 3 sets of depositions that previous week. We thought things would be back to normal. On Thursday, as the day went on, it got worse. I had folks who were complaining of headaches, nausea. They were disoriented. They couldn't. This is my own office staff. I left Thursday evening, trusting that our city officials that we had elected had told the truth when they lied and had covered up what had actually gone on. And it wasn't until we started making inquiries that we found out what the truth of the situation was. And here's what we found. In the early morning of October the 6th and October the 5th, they had started on Wednesday evening letting or trying to get the sewer line changed because of the construction of the new bridge in front of the high school. All that started around 7 p.m. that evening. It all worked fine. They had 3 trucks on site. They were only using 2. And according to Steve Carroll, who is an employee, who was an on-site employee, and Joe Farmer, who was supposed to be the inspector for the city of La Follette utilities, things went well until about 6:30 a.m., between 6:30 and 7:30 a.m. on Thursday, October the 6th. And then everything broke loose. And here's what happened. Farmer had talked to a contractor whose name is Griffith Services out of Scott County, and I understand they also have trucks in Anderson County. And I'm told in the industry that they regularly haul crude oil from various wellheads all over Scott County. The state of Tennessee, who is the primary person responsible for the reconstruction of this bridge, had subcontracted Potter Southeast to build the bridge, and Potter Southeast had the overall contract for not only reconstructing the bridge, but also removing the sewer line, and if they didn't remove and replace the sewer line, to otherwise rehab the sewer line, put everything back in place toward the end of this contract, and life go on as usual. The problem is this: the state of Tennessee failed to hire, I feel, a competent contractor. Number one, they've had 3 different designs of that bridge since it started, and it's taken way too long to begin with. Number 2 is Potter Southeast, to my knowledge, had absolutely no experience in rehabbing sewer lines. So they called in another entity, of which I have personal experience with Jellicoe, on a system that it's like blowing up a sock and putting a balloon through a sewer line, and then you inflate it, and then you seal it with resin, and then it's like a new line again. There's nothing wrong with that process, okay, if you do it right. But in order to do it right, you have to do like a bypass surgery. You take off that artery, wherever that is, and displace it. And then to take the sewage so that you can work on the artery, you pump it into another holding tank, which in this case turns out to be the Griffith tank, the hazardous tank that's been hauling hazardous waste. Now, according to the La Follette utility employees, They had a conversation with Griffith before this project started on October the 5th. You got to understand, you got to haul clean, you have to have a clean vessel for this. Oh, we don't haul anything but water and creek water. That was a lie. They represented that to the city of Follette. But more so than anything else, nobody from the city of Follette bothered to inspect the trucks to see whether or not it was a lie. Okay? So everything went well until this third truck, which is sitting in park near Like New, they decided that because of the 50-some residents who were around there, it wasn't going fast enough, so they bring in the third truck in the wee hours of the morning. And it was when that third truck is then put in place, according to their own supervisor, Chris Marlowe, and a truck driver whose name is Kenny, told Carol, buddy, might have been some crude oil in that truck. At that point, Marlowe leaves the scene after they've done their dastardly deed and is nowhere to be found for at least 30 minutes. Presumably, probably, to make a call to his boss or somebody to let him know what they've done, and still haven't come clean on what they have done to the city of Follette. And after that, everything breaks loose. I walk into my office about 7:50, within 20 minutes after this deed has been done. I have the worst odor I've ever smelled in my life. I'm nearly knocked down at my door coming in the back. I can't understand why. I thought there was an oven cleaner or something going on. It turned out it was all inside my building. I couldn't understand it. And then we make an inquiry with the city to determine what's going on, and the city says, oh, we just worked on the line. There's a fume, but it's not harmful. That was a lie. Now, we have researched the chemicals involved. And the problem that you have, and we immediately began contacting the Tennessee Emergency Management folks. We've called EPA. We finalized a report with EPA. My biggest concern at that point was my staff had been here over 8 hours the day before, exposed to this. I was exposed to this. I can tell you my sense of smell has changed. I had, for the first time, a judge tell me in the middle of my cross-examination of a witness, Mr. Dunaway, I can't hear you on Friday. That's how bad the situation was. And by that evening, I was so disoriented, I had to go to South Carolina, and then I would call back to my staff. We had fans going on the weekend, both Saturday and Sunday, could not get the odor to leave. Come Monday, I put everybody on notice, insurance carriers and all, claims for my individuals, my employees, and we began to hire. I had consultants, chemical engineer, structural engineer. And finally, after the city knew, and they knew from day one that this had happened, they found out on Friday, October the 7th, that the odor was so bad and the toxic chemicals were so bad that the fumes had permeated the meat that was being stored at the West Follette School by the Campbell County Board of Education to cook for the high school. On Friday, over 600 hamburgers were thrown out because they were unfit to eat. Okay? And our mayor wants to say that it's not harmful? You know, it's irresponsible. Okay? It's irresponsible. And you are elected as a city official, and your job is to protect the welfare and safety of the citizens who put you in office, and not to lie. And if you don't know, then find out. Okay? Get you some knowledge before you go on television, and you tell everybody it's safe. Now, to make matters worse, benzene, toluene, which are both carcinogens, you have a synergistic effect that when it's combined with methane, there's not any of these officials, and they quoted this morning in the Knoxville News Sentinel, some guy says when it's combined with sewer waste it's not harmful. He's not an engineer. That's another bald-faced lie. And the synergistic effect of all of these is untold. But you want to know what a crude oil spill will do? I can simply ask you to do one thing. Go to the Gulf. All right? Go to Alaska. Go to the Exxon Valdez, okay? And you'll find that in 1990, as a result of what had happened with the Exxon Valdez, they passed the Oil Pollution Control Act of 1990, which says that anyone who is engaged in the business of disposing of or working with oil, and they contaminate any waterway, and that has been interpreted by our courts to include a sewage system which will go to a navigable waterway, is in violation of the law, not only subject to federal penalties, but also subject to accountability under our court system. Now, here's what's happened. Contrary to the reports that have been made in the La Follette Press, contrary to the reports that were given to the News Sentinel, we know that at least 2,000 gallons were pumped into the city of La Follette sewer system at the pumping station at Lake New. Those folks east of Lake New got the residue. The folks west of Lake New did not, because it was pumped down and then comes down Beach Street and travels in a low-lying area for which the West La Follette School borders, my office borders, the First Baptist Church of La Follette borders, because there is a lateral extending up what used to be Old 6th Street near the Freeman home, and it goes down by the ballpark into this gravity-fed system that winds its way to the Pleasant Ridge treatment plant. From Pleasant Ridge, it's dumped into Big Creek, and Big Creek eventually empties into Norris Lake. So therefore, the City of La Follette, the State Department of Transportation, Potter Services and Potter Southeast, Griffith Services, and La Follette Utilities are all subject to the Oil Pollution Control Act. Now, they have now, once the City of La Follette knew that this was going on, as our elected officials and as our governmental officials, they had a duty of due diligence to not only warn the community of what was involved, but most importantly, the elderly and the afflicted who could not do anything for themselves, the newborn and the infants who certainly don't know how to fend for themselves, that you have the potential of exposure. And it's not that you're going to know what's happened to you now. It's 20 years from now from the results of having breathed toluene, benzene, and in significant quantities that we've hired professionals to tell us what quantity of air, a mixture of these compounds or gases were in this office. Now, had that information been imparted, I dare say that the Presbyterian Church would have held church. I dare say that the First Baptist Church would have held church. And if they'd known that their infants and that their daycare folks in the basement of this church were at the greatest risk of exposure to these chemicals, they would have closed their doors. That didn't happen. Now, to make matters worse and to compound the situation, we hired engineers, we hired industrial hygienists, we consulted with chemical engineers, and as of yesterday, I had a structural engineer to come to tell me what the City of La Follette should have known by its own blueprints and by its own sewer system, and what they have failed to do. And folks, to add insult to injury, after they were totally aware of this, they made our office, they made the First Baptist Church suffer for a week. After they had opened the manhole covers for the sanitary sewer system feeding down Beach Street and behind the West La Follette School, going past City Hall, which I can understand why they would take care of City Hall. All they had to do was walk up the old 6th Street behind my office. The system is maintained. There were 2 manhole covers that had remained closed, that they kept closed for a week, allowing the First Baptist Church to suffer, allowing our law office to suffer. And when I confronted the manager of the water situation yesterday, wanted to argue with me until I made him get in his truck and drive to the holes, and he found them, and it says sanitary sewer on top, and could not explain why they had not released the gas. He told me he would have it done. I waited 2 hours. It wasn't done. At 9 o'clock last night, I was between the First Baptist Church and my law office. I called the manager of the utilities, Kenny Baird. Kenny said, I'm already aware of what you've told our manager. They're supposed to be on. They're not here. He says, if they're not here within an hour, give me a call back. Within an hour, they still weren't here. Finally, after 9 o'clock last night, on October the 12th, 2011, Kenny Baird shows up in his truck, walks up from the recreation area, still does not know where the sewer lines are for the church and our office, which are plainly visible. And I show him for the first time. And he's arguing with me over the phone. Well, that's just your engineer's opinion. I said, it's not just an opinion, it's a fact. Come and see for yourself. And he comes and sees. I says, can you explain why you allowed the First Baptist Church to be poisoned for a week and you allowed our office to be poisoned for a week? And he hung his head and said, no. No. Now, while the First Baptist Church is suffering, while we have suffered for a week, and I have at least 8 claims of individuals who have been injured by this, you know what our La Follette Utilities folks have been doing? They have been planning a pig roast all week. When they were wanting to be interviewed yesterday by Channel 6, they had no comment. When News Sentinel was here, they did not have any comment. And they have been planning the pig roast for a week. And tonight, at 6 o'clock, at the La Follette Utilities in their parking lot, I would invite all of the citizens of Campbell County, particularly La Follette, to go to their La Follette Utility Board, and they've been invited now. You didn't get an invitation. I didn't get an invitation. The general public who's paying for their utility bills and their sewage rates didn't get an invitation. And this is for their, quote, good patrons. Now, I wonder if their good patrons will include Griffith Services, who haul the waste, or if it'll include Potter Southeast, or if it'll include officials from the Department of Transportation who have failed all during this week to investigate their own state agency with the Department of Transportation as to why an incompetent contractor was used on this job. I have yet to get an explanation or answer for that. Now, I think the city of La Follette residents need to show up in that parking lot. They're paying for this pig roast, of where all the patrons have been involved and the city fathers have been. I bet you'll find the mayor there tonight. I'll bet you'll find the city council members there tonight. I'll bet you'll find Campbell County commissioners there tonight. And you certainly will find the board members there tonight, eating, drinking, and being merry while they were suffocating the life out of the First Baptist Church of La Follette and suffocating the life of the employees in my office. I'm incensed. And they need to be held accountable, and this story needs to be told, and our city officials need to be called on the carpet, and they need to stop lying and stop covering up what they have done and failed to do.